to play, and I remember he said these words, and I still use this to this very day. He said, "Just be fabulous." And so it's like, it doesn't matter what you play, just be fabulous. And you know the difference between a fabulous song and not a fabulous song. You know, there's songs that are on the radio and you're like, ooh, fabulous. And then there's songs on the radio you're like, it's a hit, but it's not fabulous. Right? So it was very simple. It was like, there's so much, like, the boundaries were very narrow, but at the same time, it was very defined. You like, just be fabulous.
And there's something to be said for having a residency at a particular place over a long period of time, where the audience comes to know you, you come to know the audience. What did you learn from that?
Oh yeah, that was it, exactly. I made so many programming mistakes, like flow mistakes. You know, I would I started the night too early. I ran out of records like, you know, halfway through, and therefore the crowd left early. You got doing an 8-year residency or 7-year, 7.5. I got to work all that out, and even though at the end of that residency I still wasn't perfected, I learned a lot. You know, I mean, you learn a lot, and. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing. I got the owners of the club were fantastic. They gave me a lot of freedom to find myself and figure out who I was as an artist. And that was the big thing. Like when I would, at the same time, you know, I was a Billboard reporter and I started doing remixes for all these major artists and everything. But I was doing what the record labels wanted me to do. And I didn't really know who I was as an artist. And that's, you know, this place helped me kind of like try to figure it out.
Right, and then the next phase of your career, you know, the scene in Arizona hit an iceberg a little bit, and then you went to London.
Yeah, I said, well, you know what? I think the next step for me is to go where it's happening. And at the time, London was the epicenter of dance music. Everything was happening there. That's when Oakenfold was just huge, and then, you know, Sasha Digweed, you know, all the compilations, Ibiza, all that was happening.
And the club world in London was amazing.
Exactly. So I said, okay, I'm going to go and again start it over. I got a little studio space underneath the train tracks in Brixton. I don't know if anybody knows Brixton, but it's
South London. It's heavy.
It was definitely it was wild. And you know, like every morning 6 a.m. the trains would start rolling over my studio and start rumbling. But I went out every night and just kind of like submerged myself into the scene to try to figure it out. And the beautiful thing about it was a big studio space, and there was a drum and bass producer down the hall. There was a live band rehearsal space that's what a band was using. There was house music and a trance producer, Mike Coughlin, had a space there. And I would hear all these different sounds, drum and bass, house vocals, trance melodies. And I'd just be laying there on my futon in the studio and I'm like, what if I put all this stuff together? Trance melodies, house grooves, you know, and drum and bass lines, and that was the big key. Put it all together, and I did that and I popped. That was it. That was like, all of a sudden I started doing things for hooch tunes, for Deep Dish, Sasha and Digweed. All these guys started coming to me like, this new sound, like it's great.
And what did you learn from going to clubs there too? Because you had a million different opportunities to see a million different residents in London at the time.
Yeah. I think what I learned there was just how knowledgeable the crowd really can be, and how far you can take a crowd if you have their trust. Like there's guys who, you know, were amazing DJs, but they just, for some reason, whether it's their image on stage, whether it's how they started their sets, they did not capture the imagination or the attention of the audience.
And so they went crowd could be hard.
Huh?
The London crowd could be different.
Oh yeah, exactly. But you saw the guys that did. They could do all kinds of stuff, and the crowd was right there with them. And so I think that was one of the most important things that I learned, was just how knowledgeable, patient, and loyal these fans can be when you really are unique and have your own kind of thing going.
So in London, it sounds like you really found your creative voice. How important is it for other DJs to find that? It doesn't always happen.
No, and I think it's super important because that's what separates you from somebody else. You know, I always say you can give a chef, a bunch of chefs, tomatoes and this and that and da da da, the same ingredients, and you tell them go, all right, go, you know, make something, and you can taste the difference. It's the same ingredients, but some of these guys just they got that touch. You know, and I think that's the important thing, is you have to develop that touch, just that sense of timing, the sense of drama, the sense of, you know.
And let's fast forward to South Florida. You eventually
Yeah.
moved to South Florida, you in Miami in particular, and you were a resident at Space, which
Yeah,
is
so
a
when I got
crazy
to-
24-hour club, if anybody has never
So because I was kind of popping over there in Europe, I started getting booked at Space when I moved to Miami, and I was opening for a lot of the guys, you know, Tiesto, Armin, Ferry, Sasha, Digweed at the time. I mean, I was just, you know, opening and then playing after and playing up on the terrace until noontime, and that's when I really got to kind of understand how do you say it? The wildness of what the clubs can really be like when you really take them there, you know. And it was really amazing because at the same time, because you know I was doing mix shows back in Arizona. So at the same time, there was a radio station in Miami, Party 93.1, that started up, and they asked me as well to do a mix show. So I was able to do this mix show with this new sound that I came to London with, came back from London with, and I was doing at Space, and you know, resident at Space, something super unique, a unique sound, and they put my radio show on right before Paul Oakenfold's show, and the beauty of it was also streamed online, and so that's really where everything broke for me, because all of a sudden I wasn't just being heard at Space. I wasn't just being heard on the radio in South Florida. I was being heard worldwide. At the time, the internet was really blossoming, and we developed, you know, my radio show, Global DJ Broadcast, just developed such a cult following that it just, I wound up getting picked up by David Lewis and Armada. I was their first artist signed, and they had, you know, David Lewis used to do Tiesto, Armin and Ferry, and then Tiesto and Ferry left, and he still had Armin, and then he brought me in. So it was really great timing because he was building up Armin, and at the same time he just brought me in and, you know, building me up as well.
Talk a little bit about being prepared for the moment when it came to you, because a lot of DJs, you know, they get breaks, especially now, they get big breaks early because they make a track and they're 17 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
Again, some are more prepared than others. You had really, really put in the work. What did it mean to you to be ready at that moment?
It meant I was able to seize the opportunities. I can remember when I was the resident at Space, the owner of Space at the time, he was known in the industry of being pretty harsh. I remember, you know, he'd be like, hey, come in early because I don't know, this is the first time we're booking this DJ, and DJ would be super famous, you know, whatever, and then, you know, sit in my office, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, cool, and I'd sit in his office, he's like, this guy doesn't have it, kick him off the decks and take over. And I'd be like, oh man, it's like some famous worldwide DJ who just flew in from somewhere, and I had to go kick him off the decks. And then not only kick him off the decks, but then there was a whole crowd there that now I suddenly had to like lift and take to the next level. So being prepared gave me the opportunity, or, you know, I was able to capitalize on those kind of situations, even though they were crazy. I don't know if that kind of stuff would ever happen today.
So nobody feels sorry for the global DJ, but I want to ask you a little bit about that, because, you know, that's another thing you really have to be prepared for as well. It's not like waking up in your own bed all the time. I mean, you're in airports more than you're in hotels or clubs.
You know what the easiest thing to do is? Get a booking, have a month to prepare, and then go out there and do the set. What's not easy is landing and, oh, you don't have time to go to a hotel we're taking you right to the gig, jump up on stage, plug in, and go. Nope, not being prepared, and there's 20,000 people out there. It's like, you really have to be like on the top of your, in the top of your game in order to be able to, you know, sink or swim.
Let's talk a little bit about your gear evolution really quickly, because you obviously started on Technics 1200s, or maybe even something a little more rudimentary, belt driven.
Yeah, I had my first mix. As a matter of fact, it's funny, my cousin sent me a picture and I had one of those realistic mixers from Radio Shack back in the day.
Right. So,
and those, remember those little wooden boxes? They were like the reverb and the delay. Oh, yeah, I had that too.
Okay. But at a certain point, you probably bought your first Technics 1200s. That must have been quite a day for you.
Oh yeah, a reel-to-reel and 1200s, and I thought that I had it made. Yeah, and then the DAT player.
Right. So, but once you became professional and started traveling, what did you start getting into? Was it straight up into the CDJs?
Yeah. I remember it was pretty early in my touring days when you would carry a case of CDs and then a pack of records, because they'd have the 2 CDJs and 2 turntables. And then slowly my records just started getting less and less, to where the only records I was bringing was my own. And after a while it was like, what am I doing? And you know, what they did with the CDJ, it was just phenomenal, because everything you wanted to do with turntables, you could do with the CDJ, and you didn't have to carry all that vinyl. Because I don't know how many cases of vinyl got lost at London Heathrow.
Yeah, somebody was selling it.
Yeah, somebody had some good records.
Absolutely. So you've evolved, and I think you're a big proponent of the CDJ 3000. That's
love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I was very lucky. During the pandemic, I did some online stuff. You know, I did a tour where I was setting up in national parks and some remote locations. And Lars sent me, they were still in beta, 4 CDJ 3000s, and I got to like hook them up in my studio and mess with them for a couple of weeks before I went out, and I was just blown away. Like, are you kidding? This does this, it does that. Amazing evolution from the previous, one to this. It was, yeah.
So talk about the difference between playing a festival and playing a club, and how you approach it gear-wise.
There's no difference. I send my rider in, and it's very, like, my rider is so specific, and all festivals and clubs that book international DJs understand the setup. We need our CDJs, the 900, we need monitors, that with subs, and that's the beautiful thing about touring internationally and playing at these places. It's all very uniform. And so luckily we don't have a lot of situations where we have the wrong gear.
So I don't know if y'all know this, but Markus is very well known for playing marathon sets, 10, 12 hours at a time.
But that goes back to it's funny because as I got more famous, my sets got shorter and shorter.
Right.
Like I do 1 hour sets at a festival, where I started doing 8, 10, 12 hour sets. And now I'm doing a 1 hour set. So.
And you talk about how you make your own music to actually fit your sets. You have a Dakota pseudonym, which is sort of like after hours. You have like vocal stuff with like Emma Hewitt, and you also have your very crunching.
Yeah. So when I do my open and close sets, I approach it like 3 different DJs: an opening DJ, the main DJ, and then an after hours DJ. So I have prepared 3 different sets. My opening set can be 2 to 3 hours long, where it's a beautiful build. And I believe in a long build, because I notice, they always tell me that when I do my open and close sets, the bar makes more money than on any other night, because patience on these kind of nights when you're playing for 8, 10 hours, the key is patience. It's like you always say, like, do I pop the champagne now, or can I wait a couple more songs? And you always try to push the moment where you pop the champagne, and that's what I call when you start playing the big hits, popping the champagne. And you always try to push it back until you feel like, okay, I have to pop the champagne now. And it just builds this anticipation. and they also stay longer too. You know, the longer you can drag out the moment, the champagne moment, the longer the party goes.
So how do you physically endure through all of this?
That's the thing that everybody always asks me, and it's like, I think you're just on such you're on adrenaline when you're doing it, you know? I don't drink alcohol, so I just drink water when I'm doing these sets, so I sweat it all out. I don't go to the bathroom. That's one of the things that everybody always asks me, because I'm known for doing a 8-10 hour set and never going to the bathroom. Yeah, people have actually come backstage to see if there's something underneath the decks. Because I see them, they come up, they shake my hand, and then they're like, "There's nothing there.
There's no bucket underneath there.
There's no bucket underneath there." Right? But you know, it's like a marathon runner. You know, they don't stop to go to the bathroom. You just sweat it out, and like I'm not very nice to stand next to at the end of a set like that. It's, you know.
Yeah, you get involved.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on now with you. What gets your creative juices flowing? We had done an interview a couple of weeks ago, and you said spending time recently in Ibiza and in Europe, you heard a lot of new sounds that inspired you.
Yeah, well, you know, I think as a DJ that's focused on the creativity, like I mean, there's DJs that just go download the Beatport top 10 and then they go play a show, and then there's DJs that are like trying to find something, find something creative and be something creative. And